All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode, a long-awaited episode, I guess, of the On Point podcast, which has previously been dubbed the most depressing podcast on the internet, so we're just going to go with that. What's up? So, a lot of the topics this evening are going to be video game related, aside from a few. And, I don't know, I pulled them all up, but they're not exactly organized the best, so this may be a little bit disjointed, but it has been 2 months since I've done a single episode, so we'll see how it goes. I've been meaning to talk about the localization topic for a long time, and I feel like that might take up a majority of tonight's episode, but I don't know, it might go faster than I think. Sometimes I think I have 3 hours worth of content, and all of a sudden I'm done in like an hour, and I'm like, oh shit, quick, somebody make something up. No, but let me just get started. Let me open up the browser share here. I wasn't sure about notifications for, DLive stuff. So we'll see if it becomes too invasive. Like, I don't mind during gaming streams, all the quacks and whatever sound effects. That's fine. But, during a podcast, it's a little bit different. TNK with the lemon just to prove it. But, if it becomes really invasive, I may turn... The rule of thumb may be to turn notifications off during a podcast stream, which will probably be, only once every great while, so I'm sure you could put up with it, but if not, well, you'll have to revolt in chat, and I will deny your rights. But here we go. Drum Boy with a lemon, thank you. Okay, so I put out this tweet back in January, so that's how long I've been sitting on this, and well, there's a lot to go through. So I've been thinking a lot about the whole localization thing, and from time to time, if you follow me on Twitter, I pull up all these stupid examples that I come across, of modern stuff where they'll just take a piece of dialogue from like a Japanese game and completely butcher it. So many people have fallen for this. It's almost, I hate to use the word because I don't even like it that much, but it's almost a meme at this point because it's repeated ad nauseum. So you'll approach somebody about this localization topic and they'll be like, one of the first things they'll go to excuse it is, well, Western audiences wouldn't get it, so it has to be changed. Okay. This is a foreign piece of media, right? Mostly Japanese will be, the topic that we're covering, because Japanese RPGs are, fairly popular now. And I say that it's become a bit of a meme because, it's repeated like NPC dialogue, and it's just blindly accepted as this thing that should be perfectly okay. So again, it's a foreign piece of media. Like, no shit, there's going to be things that you might not understand right off the bat. Like, oh, no McDonald? How do I know that I'm relating to this game hard enough? Like, fuck off. Get out of here with that. It doesn't matter. My main thing is, if you're going to be playing a Japanese RPG or anything from any country, you probably have somewhat of a vested interest in things that come from that particular culture. So, to me, it's a dumbass excuse to just hand wave it with like, well, Western audiences wouldn't get that. Well, maybe they wouldn't, but it's an opportunity to learn. And maybe you want to argue like, okay, well, back in the day, before the internet was so widespread, maybe you couldn't just look up this obscure thing and find out exactly what it was meant, right? But now we're living in this information age, as they like to call it, right? We always hear so much about, well, you could just go on Google and find out anything you want. Apparently, for some reason, that just doesn't apply when it comes to Japanese games. It's so fucking stupid. Why on earth would you limit yourself like that? Okay? I mean, Moccaton says, translation, I like the chainsaw, I need a justification. Right, we're going to get into that too, because a lot of the people that replied to this tweet were like, well, the jokes were pretty funny. I laughed. Okay, jackass. Even if you got a laugh out of this, right, that doesn't mean it's inherently good. The joke could very well be funny. I'm going to argue, I'm going to take the position that it's not, because most of these jokes that I've read suck complete ass. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's hilarious. A real knee slapper. That doesn't justify coming in and changing a completely ordinary conversation. So let me give you a prime example of this, okay? We'll go back to Lunar Silver Star Story for the PS1. There's a part where you are, right at the spot where you can teleport up to the city of Vane. And there's 2 NPCs standing there on the ground. Now, this guy says, all right, why do M&Ms melt in your mouth but not in your hand? Then the other guy says, just how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Huh. So, now I want to ask everybody a question. Just stop and think about this for a moment. Does it sound normal to you that a Japanese game would ever reference American candy commercials and slogans? Think about that. Even when I first played this game, before I was, really entrenched in the whole localization discussion, I knew that this was fucked up. I knew that there was no possible way that the original creators, the writers of this game, put this dialogue in here. No. It makes no sense. There's no context to this whatsoever. These are just NPCs that you walk up to and talk to, and, they're suddenly talking about candy. I do have the images somewhere here that shows you exactly what they really say, okay? And it makes so much more sense. So instead of talking about Tootsie Pops, in the Japanese version, the random guy says, man, the magic city of Vane, how the heck can something so huge float in the air? Whenever I think it could come crashing down, I get so worried that I can't even nap. That makes a whole lot more sense because you're right below the place where you teleport to the upper city from, the floating city. And you want to... it just cracks me up that somebody... Not only that somebody thinks this is funny, but that this is somehow a valid change. Okay, it's a completely normal piece of NPC dialogue that, within the context of the world, relates to the subject matter. So why the fuck are you just completely erasing that and putting in some random candy reference, okay? This isn't even... For all the defenses I received about, well, they're just rewriting jokes that we wouldn't understand. For all of those instances where I received that response, how is that even a defense here? Because contextually, if you're playing this game, even if you're an English speaker, you would understand from the game world that you've been exploring what the NPC is talking about. It's an absolute joke that there's even people defending this. And you know what one of the greatest parts about it is? I even had people that were these so-called, anti-censorship advocates defending it. Like, well, it's okay if it's just, some jokes, as long as it's not political. Well, here's my thing, okay? It's sort of like the slippery slope, except we have... been thrown down the slope, hit every rock on the way down, and then smashed into a tree. Because the path that the precedent that this set, where people could just rewrite shit, is exactly what has paved the way for these rewrites, these political rewrites, these modern sensibilities. And that's another thing we're going to get into later on the topic of Sega. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. It's been a while since I have, gone through this thread, so let me just take a couple of looks here. Okay, so here we go. First offender. Nah, this ain't it. There's a difference between adding in fun little jokes that don't break the tone and completely changing the context of a scene for woke points. There are bad examples of localization and good ones, but you do an astonishingly poor job at presenting the bad. Well, had somebody taken the time to actually read what they were defending, he would have realized that the tone and the context were completely destroyed in the candy slogan example. Given that the original conversation is not a joke, and it relates to the game world. It's a little piece of info that kind of gives you some insight into the minds of the citizens of that world. They're fearful that, one of the guys is fearful that, this floating city, this amazing floating city could come crashing down at any time. But nope, bad example. And it also ignores the fact that my overall point, even by presenting these lesser examples, which, you could obviously argue that these are on the lesser end of the spectrum because they're jokes and not, these political shoehorned messages. But my point was that this is how that path to rewriting to the woke shit was paved, because we've already had it justified where like, oh, well, this line is meaningless, so changing this to be something that the people would recognize and nod their heads in agreement to would be okay. That's exactly the same mindset that they use when they're like, well, this guy's talking about, borders or something in this game, so let's throw in a little Drumpf reference and how that's bad. Speaking of which, I found that right before the stream. Apparently a level 5 game. This king says, he could be riddled with disease for all we know. Leave well alone, I say. I knew I should have built a wall along our borders. And now you could say that maybe that doesn't relate, but let's go to the next screen, which I think solidifies the idea that this was a little nod to the Punch All MAGA Hats crowd, okay? Oh, look. Kovifi Cafe. Interesting. I wonder what that's a reference to. There are other examples. Somebody said the name of this game. Apparently the princess has been censored. You could see here she's wearing like a two-piece sort of outfit with the thigh highs and whatnot. But then for the English version, they just edited that, they painted that into a shirt. Because for some reason, you can't see some super deformed bitch with, a bikini top. I don't know. I don't get it. But that's just me. So people want to justify this bullshit. Oh, apparently it's called Snack World, the Dungeon Crawl Gold. Now, I get the feeling that this is looked at as, this is kind of like what Funimation does, where they'll never do this to very prominent anime that a lot of eyes are going to be on, that are going to make a lot of sales. But they'll take these more niche titles and then throw in these references. I kind of feel like that's what happened here, because this doesn't seem like a particularly important game. Snack World, the Dungeon Crawl Gold. Seems like it'd be a mobile one or some shit like that. I mean, you can tell from the graphics it's not exactly, AAA material. So it's mind-blowing to me that this continues. And what's even worse is that they have cultivated this whole fan base of enablers. Like, yes, mega corporation, please tell us what's acceptable, master. Do our bidding for, like, no, that's not even how it works at all. What's really happening is that you're becoming the slave to them because you believed in their bullshit justification of, well, you're a Western audience, you wouldn't get it. What are you, stupid? The whole thing is mind-blowing to me, because we have plenty of motherfuckers that are willing to learn a completely different language. And that's, that's great. That's respectable. But the point I'm trying to make is, if people are capable of learning a different language, surely they are capable of learning these different cultural references or jokes. In fact, I would say that that's the better way to go about it. So something I like about certain manga that I have read in the past. First example that comes to mind is Bamboo Blade. So because it's like set in, it's set in modern Japan. So there are a lot of jokes and references pertaining to popular, Japanese cultural things. Of course, I'm not going to understand that, all of them at least, right off the bat. So they have translation notes where they, they'll tell you like, okay, this is what this means. They put a couple of pages at the back. Personally, I think that maybe they should do something like that. So a lot of these JRPGs come out with special editions that include like art books or interviews or things of that nature. So why not, put in a page with some translation notes or something. Now, I'm sure you'll have some people that will complain and be like, well, why do I have to read a book in order to play a game? Well, first of all, you're playing a JRPG, so be prepared to read anyway. But second, is it really that taxing on your brain to just take a couple of minutes to familiarize yourself with something, completely different? And then when you hear that reference, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember, I read, that's what that means. It's referring to that particular cultural thing or joke or pun or whatever. I'm sure you could probably come up with some exceptions where these things are, not exactly doable, or maybe it wouldn't make too much sense to do. But I honestly think it would be beneficial to do something like that. A little creativity, just find a way to stop making these stupid changes. I never want to see an American pop culture reference in a foreign game. Ever. It completely breaks the immersion. Some people apparently get like a kick out of this and, nod their head and like, ooh, I recognize that. It's a Big Bang, you know what I mean? Like Big Bang Theory reference or some stupid shit. But is that really what you want for yourself? Is that the level of mediocrity that you want to accept? I mean, you're paying these companies to do a job, and you would think that part of that job would be to do it properly, to give you an accurate depiction of this foreign developer's story, their vision. Why can't you keep it accurate? Why can't you try to be as close to that as possible and stop, putting in these creative writer wannabes that think they're so clever that they can somehow just erase a reference or a joke and put their own in, and it's going to have the same impact. Because it's not. In fact, if anything, it does break the tone. It does break the immersion. You know that that's not supposed to be there. Even if you laugh at that, you know deep down that that stupid reference doesn't belong there. Creative writer wannabe, possible new alt name. Sorry guys, I'm a little bit in a rant mode, so I'm not exactly ignoring you. I'm just, trying to make something out of this. But it drives me nuts that people who would claim to be, proponents of anti-censorship, have just learned to... They fell for the conditioning, is what I'm trying to say. Some of the excuses that I've seen are just complete garbage. And the thing is, you could find examples that, okay, maybe they're not bothersome to you, but that doesn't mean that they belong there. That doesn't mean it's the right thing to do just because you personally are not bothered. And I'm not even saying that just because I am clearly personally bothered, that, that's why it should change. I'm coming at it from the perspective of the creative integrity is more important than the entitlement of wannabe creative writers and the giggles of fanboys who, for whatever reason, nod their head in agreement with these decisions. Personally, I think that if you justify this, you're an enabler. You may not realize that you're an enabler, but you are an enabler for all this woke shit. You're just one level off, okay? You're just like, oh, well, I'm okay with it because it's not that. All the while not realizing that the principle of the practice is absolutely the same thing. And in my opinion, most likely led us to where we are. Best thing you can do in these cases, let the original creator of the medium in question know about the changes. Sure, there's definitely instances, nothing off the top of my head, but I've definitely heard of instances where creators have approved of changes. Maybe that is a better way to go about it, is to at least get the permission of, the creator. I think in a lot of these cases, that is simply not the case, especially these garbage political references. Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, so I think that may be it for that part. Okay, so then the other thing that we have come across, and this is going to get into a favorite website of ours, known as that I like to refer to as Hard-Cucked Gaming 101. This is a response to one of his posts, which we'll get into in a sec. But it just goes to show that even our blessed fan translations, Brian with the ice cream, thank you, are not free of this particular brand of cancer, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of games, Japanese games that don't come out here where, we're never going to get a translation of that. It's just never going to happen. Maybe it's not popular enough, whatever. The point is it never made it over, and the only way we're ever going to get it is translation. So this guy, who apparently did the translation of Magic School Lunar, the thing about localization is if you encounter something like this, new half is also a derogatory term in Japanese since it construes gender nonconformity as this alien thing, which, by the way, it is. It's perfectly acceptable to write it out if the game allows for it. Who died and made you, the king of this to decide that? Who? Hell, that's what I did with Magic School Lunar Translation. There's a surprising amount of pedophilia references I had to write out of the Japanese script. Now, given how loosely all these terms are thrown around, I'd be very interested in knowing exactly what he construed as pedophilia references. Now, even if they were jokes, why exactly do those need to be changed? You know what's funny is that the people on this side of the aisle will defend. I mean, look, you get articles like, I'm a pedophile, but I'm not a monster. But yet, here they are writing jokes out of games. Now, look, you could say, okay, well, maybe this guy doesn't agree with that either. Fair enough. But my point is that why are you more concerned with references in video games, which is fiction, as opposed to problems with reality? Now, I know the answer. The answer is that it's so much easier to get a victory over on fiction than it is in reality. See, all you have to do in fiction is you erase a line and you cleverly rewrite it with your own, right? And it's all better. You made it all better. Magic, right? Ooh, look at me. I'm really changing things. That's their attitude. But in reality, it's not so easy to fix those problems, now is it? Absolutely not. Maybe never. Because, you can't completely get rid of all these people that are going to do these horrible things in the world, no matter how you try. Let's get into the actual topic, though, because I thought this was amazing. And what I think was even more amazing about it is the follow-up tweet to this, where he basically just debunks himself. So he says, trigger warning, transphobia. Is it too much to ask for right-wing fan translators to not stick slurs into their work? Now, the best thing about this is, another great aspect is that here he is complaining about what he perceives to be a right-wing insertion into a what you could argue is a Japanese game, so it's neutral on American politics, most likely. And the line of dialogue says, "I'm actually a tranny. Should I tell my boyfriend the truth?" Flamenco with 9 viewers. Thank you for the host, man. Appreciate it. So then we go, follow up. I booted up my Japanese copy to check, and it used new half, but it's still a shitty word to translate it as. From my understanding, which you could argue is a very limited understanding, that this is already a very, not very derogatory, but a derogatory term. It's not something you would just call people from day to day. So, tranny is, much in the same vein. What's unacceptable about that? It's fiction. Who is actually bothered by this? Now, in the comments, you had people complaining like, "Oh my God, this game portrays trans people as just trying to trick, cis people." Ooh. As if there's never been any examples of that happening in reality ever. But I thought video games were supposed to mirror reality perfectly. So by their own logic, this scene belongs in a video game because it happens in real life. See, you gotta play by your own rules. So it turns out that the translator is not at all right wing in this situation. He got a lot of shit for this, and I don't know if I can even find the. Oh man, this is great. Great edit. I'm actually mentally ill. Should I tell my boyfriend the truth? Now that's a change I can get behind. No, I don't know if the translator even has his account anymore, but he did comment. He did this whole, apology tour thing of like, "Oh my God, I'm so shaken to my core that anybody could ever think I was right wing and hateful and blah blah blah." So yeah, that made me lose a little bit of sympathy for him, but at the same time, nobody likes to be construed as something that they aren't, perceived as something they aren't. He deleted his account. Jeez. Hybrid Human, thank you for the follow. Yeah, it's a fan translation. It's just stupid how, there's no way to make somebody happy in this situation, especially because even if the word was changed, you can remove the quote-unquote slur, they still wouldn't be happy by the portrayal of Konami, in the original version, having this this so-called trick scene. So there's no way to please them. From my understanding, at first it seemed like they were going to change it, but I think the translator quit. But I don't think that he changed it. And then people, were rallying for romhacking.net to take it down. I don't think they took it down. But even so, the translation is spread around. I downloaded it. I'm never going to make it go away. Even if they change it, I'm going to redistribute it. It's actually really stupid, too, because it's kind of like Cooper is saying, why are they erasing history? And this is actually another hypocritical thing on their part is, well, their argument is usually like video games are art, right? So why are you messing with art? Why are you messing with historical pieces of art in order to insert your message just because you don't like it? Doesn't seem right to me. It's just bullshit. Well, that's back in the day. It wasn't considered art. I agree, but that's what they think of it now. And I mean that's a whole other topic. Whether video games or art or not, that is a bullshit headache inducing topic. I've talked about that recently in another chat, and I want to say that I think the issue now is developers going into it with the intent to create this, amazing piece of art, rather than focusing on creating a good game, with a compelling story and characters that ends up as being considered artistic in the eyes of the audience. I don't think you can decide, this isn't a painting, it's a video game, it's made for entertainment first and foremost, or at least that's what it should be. I think games obviously contain artistic elements. I mean, there's music, there's there's graphics, there's character artwork. But they didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to make, the video game equivalent of the Mona Lisa. They worked with the limitations that they had at the time and created some really wonderful masterpieces in spite of that. It's pretentious bullshit to have to go into it with the mindset of like, oh, I'm creating art with your nose up in the air. Because to me, that in itself is an attitude that sucks the actual soul out of it. I don't think the games that I would consider, excuse me, lost my voice. I don't consider the games like that I really enjoy and would say are somewhat artistic to be created with the intent of being art. It just so happens that, these developers got together and made something that happened to be special. But I think first and foremost, they went into it with the intent of making a great game and ended up with something greater, not necessarily by accident, but just by extension of focusing on the right aspects of it, which would be creating a quality piece of entertainment, a good story. Who cares if it's hard? I just want to play them. Exactly. That's another thing. It doesn't matter. People are talking about things like Gone Home or Depression Quest. Like, it's so edgy and artistic and blah, blah, blah. No, they suck. They completely suck as games. That's not art. It's digital cancer. That's what it is. It's digital cancer. If you have a Japanese copy, why even play the ROM hack? I think he just, I don't know, honestly. I think he just did it to, be a prick and find fault. Let me see. I think there are some more video game related things here. Oh, this is sort of in the same vein. From a couple of weeks ago, they were discussing some anime dub that was coming out. Not even anything I was invested in, so I don't remember the title or anything, but this guy writes, and it's the same sort of attitude. Sounds good to me. It's a fresh take on the story. Dubs don't have to be a perfect translation. It's more fun when the language that's doing the dub throws their personality into it. Oh yeah, that's another thing. I'm gonna pull that up because this dude has a major habit of calling people chud on the internet, and I just want you to see. I want you to see the representation of what people calling you chud on the internet actually look like. Yeah, this is the guy who was like, "I'm sorry for making people angry." Woo! I don't really understand. What was his name? Kurt colada or something. I think that was it. Yeah. Okay, so we'll go with the two different photos here. Let me pull it up. Yeah, guys. All right. So this is the dude who calls you a chud on the internet from behind his Birdman avatar. The man is. I say man when I use the term man, I use it very loosely. Just keep that in mind. He is the personification of this term. Major projection. Captain Soyboy, reporting for duty. I just can't. Oh, this is the sick world we're living in. Okay. But yeah, so back to this comment real quick. This is a major issue when it comes to, translations and dubs and whatnot, is this desire that these actors and these writers have to throw their personality into it, when really what they should be doing is trying to provide an accurate experience in the language of the country, that they're going to release it in. They take way too many liberties. You give them an inch and they want to take a mile. It's never enough for them. Thank you for the lemons. So that's my major point on this is people can come up with all of the, the little justifications they want. They can come up with all these exceptions. But at the end of the day, there's a major overstepping of bounds when it comes to these things. And it's time to stop. It's time to take back your shit. Stop caving in. Stop letting these stupid companies decide for you what you can and can't understand, because they're effectively calling you a moron who can't learn. and you're just accepting it like, oh, well, they give me my games consumer. That's what it is. It's the consumer meme. Don't ask questions, consume product, and then get ready for next product, right? Get excited for next product. Endless cycle. And that's all they need to do. They don't care about you. They just want their profit. The only companies I respect are the companies which at this point I'm not even sure I can name any, but that would respect the integrity of the original work and try to bring you as accurate as possible of a presentation. And I think that, look, there are obviously workarounds here, okay? You can obviously learn a new language. But even if that is the case, that doesn't mean that these people should get away with this. Even if I was 100% fluent in Japanese, which, that may not even happen in my lifetime, I don't think it's right what they're doing here. They don't deserve to do that just because they have the quote-unquote power of translation. Hey, I always appreciate the viewers now. Come on. If all I cared about was lemons, I'd be out of here a long time ago. Okay. What else we got? I think we're still kind of on the same topic. Okay, yeah, I actually pulled up the articles. But that's not important. I think we're going to pull up this one because this has some more examples, and it's similar. I think this article was inspired by the recent Hard-Cucked Gaming drama. So it's a different word they're focusing on, but I at least like this guy's work all right, because from what I've seen of it, he doesn't really try to insert his politics into it. I don't know what they are. Maybe we could guess, since, it seems like so many people in this sort of quote-unquote nerd sphere have that. But for the most part, he seems all right. He seems like he keeps it out. So I think it's, fair. It seems like even if he found something personally offensive, he would still try to honestly explain what it means. And that, at the very least, that I can respect. So they're talking about the word okama in this one. Because of the nature of this topic, the following article contains Japanese and English slurs related to LGBTQ individuals. Look, I think it's a little gay to put that in there. Like, who cares? But it is what it is. That's the climate we're living in. Screenshot of the comment by a guy who essentially saying about Apple, it was only because he was a shareholder and loves Apple. Okay, that's a little sad. I can't understand this dick riding of corporations all the time. It's like, I think it's perfectly fine to enjoy a product. But when you get to the point of having to white knight for a corporation that clearly is, at the end of the day, they're in it to collect your money because they're providing a product for that very reason, a little bit sad. If he has that disclaimer, he knows politics. Yeah, probably. That's fair. I didn't know that was there at first, but I see it now. So obviously, the term is male homosexual, effeminate man, male transvestite, fag, a queer, all the good ones. So he just goes over how it appears in media. But some good examples are the Goemon games, which is mystical ninja in America. So here's some instances of where it's been changed. So he says, in this language, in Japanese, it says mysterious okamas, and then he just says, instead says several members. It's not the same. So he took it out completely. They call him mysterious flake gang in this, which is kind of funny, I guess. They changed it to, instead of okama jerk, it's weirdo. Weirdo, yeah. I mean, look, weirdo kind of works. It's not the same. It doesn't have the sexual orientation charge behind it, but, some of them are pretty weird. Space Force Cyborg Z, thank you for the follow. So now we're going to get into the Yakuza series. And I haven't played this yet. It's a series that I wanted to get into because, a lot of people said it was pretty good. I may still give it a chance at some point, but there are some concerning things here in regards to Sega, and not just from, an English perspective, but even the Japanese one. So it's like the whole world is kind of just bowing down to this garbage of like, oh, we need to be more sensitive for reasons. When, again, this is messing with remakes. Like, these are updated versions that just recently came out for the PS4. Because I think their intention was to have from 0 to 6 on one platform, so everybody could find it on the same system, which is cool. But as you'll see when we go on, that there have been a little bit of some changes here. So let's see. Sega's popular and long-running Yakuza series often features Okama characters, and because most of the Yakuza games have received multiple translations and re-releases, we can actually see how treatment of the word Okama has changed over the past 15 years. So in the 2008 English translation, it was translated as homo. 2008 was a better time. Maybe. So then they received a remake in 2018, and rather than saying homo, he just said Okama mama. So you could just, you could see that word, and if you don't know what it means, you could go look it up for yourself and be like, oh, I get it. I mean, contextually, you could probably kind of figure it out for yourself given what the character looks like. But I like this. I'm okay with this because it leaves in the original word and it gives the player the opportunity to go that extra and be like, okay, what the hell does this mean? And then you're like, oh, I see, I get it. It's not censoring it, it's just leaving it the way it is. I guess some people could say, well, it's kind of cringe because, it's randomly throwing in a Japanese word in English text, but there's worse, and I think worse is where we're headed. Yakuza 3, 2010. So these terms were translated as drag queen and drag king, which, look at them, it's clearly a dude in a dress. So, okay, almost a decade later, the game was re-released for the PlayStation 4. However, citing modern social sensibilities, here we go, the MSS has taken us out again. I'm going to go to the article that's citing in a moment, but let's just quickly look. So, Yakuza 4, 2011, was translated as cross-dresser and as tranny. And in the re-release, it's Okama again. Okama bar. So, basically gay bar. Maybe with like a slightly more derogatory connotation if you look at the translations of the word up above. But still, you get it. It makes sense. But let's go to the article here. So, Sega, this is why I said Sega Cucks in the title. Sega cuts content from Yakuza remasters. The perception of the LGBT community was different to how it is nowadays. Come on, man. This is pathetic. This is like, people will, here's how people justify this one, and it kind of pisses me off. It's like, well, it's not censorship because they're censoring themselves. They've decided to change the content on their own because they want to be kinder to people. And it's like, well, if that's how you want to create things, you might as well pack it up and go home. Because you're never going to release a game or a story or any sort of fiction where you can't find somebody who's like, this offends me. In fact, I would argue that it's perfectly fine to offend people with your fiction. One, who gives a shit? And two, the entire point of creating fiction is to evoke emotion. So positive or negative, those are emotions. You can feel how you want to feel about a piece of fiction. It's such bullshit to be like, well, times have changed, so now this remake of a game has changed. No, it doesn't. It was created in that time period that you're saying things were different. So therefore, it should be preserved the same way. And also, the game is fucking called Yakuza, for Christ's sakes. Why would they care? Like, it's a criminal... It's a game about a criminal organization, Japanese mafia. Why would they give a shit about being sensitive? Like, it doesn't even make sense contextually. But let's see what Seth Barton here has to say about it, because he's going to give us some great takes about fiction and why you should feel bad for liking it the way it is. Sega is remastering Yakuza 3, 4, and 5, with the first title having launched at Gamescom, but not all of the content made the cut, series producer Daisuke Sato tells MCV. Sega is tying up its long-running Yakuza series with the re-release of the middle three entries in the series, 3, 4, and 5. These were originally on the PS3, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah, like I said, this way fans will be able to enjoy the whole series on PS4 with 0 to 6. While the updates are largely technical, developer RGG Studio has taken the chance to make some edits to the original game. It says, please note that this interview was done via translator. Okay, so he says there are technical issues, but also content issues that we need to change because they don't fit the modern mindset anymore. Has anybody ever heard of like a period piece anymore? Like, it's perfectly okay to portray something of a time period the way that it was. You don't have to just I think this is a really big problem where it's gotten to the point where it's like people want to be so sensitive that they don't even want to acknowledge that insensitivity existed in the first place. They just want to erase it wherever they can. Isn't that exactly how you go, to the future with forgetting the past and repeating the mistakes of the past because you have no frame of reference to go back and look at? What do I know, I guess. When asked for examples, he continued, the first game is 10 years old. Back in the day, the perception of the LGBTQ community was different to how it is nowadays. So think about that. In just 10 short years, things have changed so much. This has been put into fucking turbo mode to the point where they can't even do the game the way it was anymore. Now, Seffi here makes a good makes a joke, but this is this is actually a good point. It's like, how can you hold everything to the standard of modern sensibilities when modern sensibilities are constantly evolving? I mean, by their own logic, just within 10 years, the perception of this quote-unquote community has changed so much that they can't even throw in a word. They can't even use a word anymore. They actually have to get rid of content. If you ask me, that's evolving too fast. That's headed on a crash course. And I think by doing this, you turn more people off to these concepts than you do bringing in more acceptance. It's insane. And, I mean, that's saying that media should be there to brainwash people in the first place, which it shouldn't. But that's all they think about when they make things now. How can we make this sensitive to X type of person so that they're portrayed in a positive light, and therefore people will see it and they'll think good things of these people? Why do they deserve to have good things thought about them 100% of the time across the board? Oh, so generalizations are bad except for when we can use them to make, these people look like complete angels? Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. While 10 years ago isn't a huge amount of time, see, this line pisses me off. And maybe such content shouldn't have been there to begin with. It's good to see the studio rectifying its previous errors. No. No. First of all, look at this motherfucker right here. Thinking he knows so much better. Oh, it should have never been there to begin with. That's just problematic. How do you learn about the mindset of people in the past if you can't even acknowledge the way that they thought in the first place? So we're just going to pretend that all this acceptance stuff has always existed. Meanwhile, whenever they want to argue about why they need more shit, it's because in the past they've been mistreated. Always a conflict. Always a contradiction. It drives me absolutely insane. And to see people sit here and praise it is such a foreign concept to me that they might as well be the ones speaking, Japanese. Because I just don't... Well, maybe I shouldn't use that as an example. Well, Chinese, fine. Chinese, okay? We'll go with a different Asian language. But the point is that this is just an extremely foreign concept to me, and I don't understand how you can sit there and praise it. Let's see. Speaking of cultural sensibilities, we also asked Sato if I think they're getting off topic, but let me just see. If he thinks differently about his Western fan base as opposed to those who are playing the games in Japan itself. Personally, I don't think that the Western territories will completely grasp the concept of the Yakuza clans in Japanese culture. But then I also like the Godfather movies, for example, although I don't entirely grasp the concept of the Mafia. But there are human interactions, there are two rival groups, there's a very nice storyline around it, and I think the same applies for the Yakuza series. Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe people don't completely understand all the cultural connotations, but at the end of the day, there's, relatable themes and blah, blah, blah. But this whole changing things just to satisfy this imaginary group of modern-minded people is a complete and total mind virus that is just being passed around worldwide. And it seems like nobody of prominence is just standing up and saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to leave things the way it was because we stand by our creations. We like them the way they were. And even if people will be offended by them now, that doesn't erase the fact that they existed and they'll always exist. And that's what people need to do. Instead of just being like, well, we don't want anybody to feel bad, except for those people because they're Nazis and they deserve to feel bad. I mean, you can't... I think that's going to probably segue into the next topic, but you can't pretend to be like somebody who wants to appeal to everybody and then decide, I don't like this group of people, so I don't care about their feelings. Yeah, I mean, either you care about mass appeal or you realize that you're trying to target a much smaller audience. It's actually nuts. Look at this guy. Would you really expect anything else out of his stupid mouth? What a jackass. Which takes me to this. Oh dear. I don't know. I mean, tabletop gaming, Vice, of course they're gonna write a piece of shit. But this is based around a tweet thread that I did reply to on Twitter, so we'll check it out anyway. How tabletop RPGs are being reclaimed from bigots and jerks. New rulebooks and designer's notes are making horror RPGs a more inclusive and healthy hobby. This is actual bullshit, okay? The thing that drives me insane about this is that I am old enough to remember when tabletop games were just considered the hobbies of losers with no friends, which is ironic considering you need friends to play them. Complete social rejects that never came out of the basement. And there are still people that make those jokes, but now these things are popular and everybody wants in. And now they want to pretend that they're the ones that were being kept out when they never wanted a part of it in the first place, because they harshly judged the people that were into it originally. Oh, this is stupid, this is gay, this is retarded, this is nerd shit. Oh yeah, that's right. They used all those words that now they call the rest of us out for using. But they want to pretend that because they are, their convictions and their opinions are so malleable to the modern mindset that somehow they have the high ground. It's a complete joke. I would think that you would just think that people would have some semblance of self-awareness, but it's either they're so stupid that they fail to recognize they're hypocrites, or they're so malicious that they just don't care. I'm thinking it's probably a combination of the two, depending on, who the person is at the time. But it's crazy how they're trying to complain about gatekeeping while trying to kick out the original people who were fans of these products. It's mind-numbingly stupid. And if you just look at the priorities. I mean, this is considered like some sort of real important battle in the minds of these people. It's because, like I said, they can only, obtain absolute control through fiction, because addressing real problems is too hard. And their goal is to use fiction as nothing more than a vessel for their propaganda. And at this point, I'm beginning to think it's pretty effective. I personally would prefer politically neutral products in the sense that not in the sense of being absent of politics, because that's always the straw man argument they come up with, where it's like, well, you really saying Metal Gear Solid was apolitical? No, jackass. What we're saying is that we don't want shoehorned modern day politics with all of these real world references put into games or tabletop or whatever fiction that you can imagine. It just doesn't belong there. If you make a story now that is, based on real life or something like that, that's different. But for fantasy or sci-fi or whatever, the only politics should be those that are contextual to the world that you've created. Eric Wolf with the ice cream, thank you. So let's see the cancer that they have inflicted upon us. I think we're going to have a chemo stream after this. When tabletop role-playing game developer Evil Hat Productions announced it had included a content warning on page 6 of its recently released Fate of Cthulhu game, many folks praised Evil Hat, but there was also the now predictable tide of hateful bullshit. And I'm supposed to think this is this is what a professional writer looks like, people. The tide of hateful bullshit. Sounds like an enemy ability in one of these shitty, watered-down RPGs because they can't think of anything that's actually creative. I mean, by the way, from what I understood of the new, lore of this Cthulhu game, it's basically Terminator ripped off. It's like, the time-traveling hero goes back in time to save the world or whatever. Although I guess the difference would be, it's otherworldly abominations as opposed to robots that are going to take over the world with some powerful AI. Fate of Cthulhu is an RPG where players take on the role of time travelers trying to stop a Cthulhu-style apocalypse. It's inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft, who was racist and anti-Semitic. Vehemently racist and anti-Semitic. Because of that, Evil Hat Productions is publishing a content warning on page 6 of Fate of Cthulhu that calls out the author and highlights the work of writers of color who have re-examined and reinterpreted the author's works. Imagine calling yourself a fucking writer of color. Like, why can't you just be a writer? You're such a dumbass that you have to attach that to everything. Everything is something of color, something of color, something of color. Like, you always have to remind us. Oh, notice me. Okay, so the part that pisses me off about this bullshit call out. Okay, first of all, the man is dead. From way back. Like, you really expect that this person would have had modern sensibilities? Oh, we're calling him out, though. We are calling him out. Motherfucker, he can't read it. What is the value in this? It's just to make yourself feel like better people. Because you can't reconcile the fact that you enjoy something that comes from someone that you would consider a bad person. And then to sit here and profit off of it. Even worse. Completely aggravating. Racism and fear of the unknown powered Lovecraft's work. It's not a bug, it's a feature. That's pretty cool, actually. Yet his work is still compelling to many, including myself. The weirder the world gets, the more popular his work becomes. We can acknowledge the fear behind his imagination while also re-examining what came out of it. Evil Hat Productions said in its content warning. I mean, look, is anybody actually playing a tabletop RPG and then suddenly, they're reading the source book and all of a sudden they're like, well, I've decided I hate the darkies, and they flip the table and go on some racist tirade? Does that really happen? Do they go out into their, shed and grab the white hood and the fucking torch and start burning crosses on people's lawns? No, jackass. Fiction doesn't create that shit. It's mind-blowing to me how anybody can believe this. How anybody can be convinced by such an empty statement. It really reminds me of that stupid scene in Family Guy. I don't even know why I'm thinking this. I guess because I saw it earlier today, the clip, where Lois is just like, 9/11 was bad. And then some guy's like, you know, they're all clapping and some guy's like, I agree with that. Like, no shit. No, there's very few people that are going to say that these concepts are good things. Very few. So at this point, you're just like, you're beating a dead horse, you're preaching to the choir, and all the while profiting off of somebody that you're saying is a bad person. But you're using their work because you don't have the creativity to do the same thing. You have to latch on to somebody else's popularity, edit it to your liking, and then make it into some bullshit, hardly recognizable piece of trash that is a shallow, empty shell of what it used to be, because your politics ruin everything. Absolutely everything. The responses were predictable, just like the virtue signaling. Thousands of people replied to the tweet. Some praised Evil Hat's decision, while others logged on to defend Lovecraft from criticism. So this is actually amazing, right? He says the response... This is just dumb writing at its best. The responses were predictable. Then goes on to say, oh, some people loved it and some people hated it. Aren't those, like, two of the only options? Isn't the only other thing, like, just complete neutrality? Way to cover those bases there. You predicted it. Oof. This dude should take over for Miss Cleo. Space Force, thank you for the lemons. I didn't think I'd be making a Miss Cleo reference. Holy shit, that's a blast from the past. Okay, where were we? Evil Hat for daring to point out that a racist was a racist. Since the predictable edgelords and apologists have now shown up, Evil Hat said in response, a quick reminder, if you don't like the politics included in our games, don't buy them. We literally do not want your money. We are committed to diverse and inclusive gaming. We're not perfect. We're trying. Now, here's where that disconnect comes in again. Like, how do you exclude people, and then in the very next statement, say that you're out for diverse and inclusive gaming? No, you're not. You just said you're not. And that's fine, but be honest. Drumboy, thank you for the ice cream. Arkenis, thank you for the lemons. I do see you guys. I actually, just so everybody knows, I appreciate everybody who's here donating or not. Sorry I can't keep up, with the with all the chat, but I'm on a roll, so I gotta go with it. We'll talk a little before I log off. So this is bullshit. By this dude's own logic, like, he doesn't like the politics of the dead creator, so maybe he shouldn't be playing this game. Maybe he shouldn't be editing this man's work. Maybe he shouldn't be profiting off of it because he's committed to diversity and inclusion. How could he do that? Yeah, it's because these principles are hollow and fake. Let me get a sip of water here. Tabletop RPGs are intimate experiences. Players and game masters collaborate to tell a story. Now, this is always interesting to me when people want a virtue signal about tabletop gaming, because the game itself, like the mechanics and the lore and whatever, that shit should, unless it's a political game, that shit should be politically neutral when it comes to real-world politics, because tabletop games are a system, okay? Like, for example, Dungeons & Dragons, it's just a system. Yes, it has lore, but when you're at home with your friends playing around the table, you decide what to do at that table. You decide what the story is. You can rework anything to your liking. So I think it's absolutely asinine to constantly talk down to players of these games who are just doing whatever the hell they want in the privacy of their own home anyway. That thing the LGBT community was supposed to be doing? Yeah, all right. Some of these stories can include themes of violence, sex, and any number of horrors, both supernatural and banal. Increasingly, game designers are including guides and content warnings to help players navigate these themes He said responsibility, but he means responsibly. So oh man, like, how stupid do they treat you? They really treat people like they're idiots. I mean, in a general sense, I'm inclined to agree. But if you're somebody that's making a product, you don't treat your audience like a moron. You go into it with the idea that these people just want to have a fun and entertaining experience. So there's no responsibly, okay? Because people decide what they want to do in their own private games. And how they determine that is up to them. And if you don't like the way that somebody is doing that, all you have to do is find a different group of people to play with. So, you know, what is the actual problem here? I'll tell you what the actual problem is. They don't want you to enjoy it your way. They want you to enjoy it their way. And they have come to the realization that they can't really control that. So the best they can do is infest these companies, rewrite everything so that you hate it, and push you out that way. Honestly, at this point, I think all these companies that do this shit deserve to go under. I think everybody that enjoys tabletop games of any kind should just play the older editions of them before this bullshit started and make them drown for their decisions. Now that's difficult to do because so many people are just willing to accept things. Like it's the consumed product that we're excited, we're hyped because something that we like has a new edition coming. And on one hand, you know, that's an understandable mindset, but at the same time, it's also extremely shallow and devoid of any critical thought, you know, where maybe it's like you should examine this and think like, okay, what are they doing here? Is this the same game that I know and love? Or have they changed it so much that it's completely foreign to me and unrecognizable and just simply not enjoyable because they've taken the soul out of it and replaced it with this ideology that claims to be all about inclusion, but is truly just a method of propaganda to turn you into one of them. It's pretty much NPC, the tabletop game. Let's see. Okay, so when they do, Evoke Contingent Online pushes against it. Yeah, people that actually care about the integrity of these systems and games. But players and designers say the content warnings and mature playing guides are working as intended, gatekeeping bad elements of the community and providing a framework for sensitive players to deal with mature narratives in a safe environment. There it is. So they complain about gatekeeping and then gatekeep. They're the ultimate masters of projection. They always do precisely what they accuse you of. And you want to know why it works? Because most of these people take these accusations and rather than just continuing to do what they do, they'll waste time trying to justify how they're not these things that they've been accused of. Who the fuck even wants to play Fate of Cthulhu? It looks awful. It really does. I want to look at some of the artwork, the new artwork for that, because it looks like just watered down Tumblr art. Hasn't Real Hat threatened to, or Evil Hat, I guess, live streams of their games on Twitch and other places that don't go by their rules? I'm actually not sure. What's mature about around a shitty Terminator RPG made into Cthulhu game? I don't know. Don't ask me. But you have to be ready. You have to be mature. Evil Hat Productions recently told me they felt it was important to create distance between themselves and Lovecraft. How do you do that? How can you do that when you're using this man's writing, his world, his creations? Evil Hat is committed to creating games that are welcoming and inclusive, and so we had an obligation to separate the art from the artist. No one needs to implicitly endorse the bigoted views of HPL just because they find value in the seeds of Cosmicari planted. But you're the only... This is incredible because these are the only people doing that. Like I said, nobody is reading his books or enjoying the games based on his works and then suddenly conforming to all of his worldviews. That's not how that works. Just because that's how that works for you people, that doesn't mean that's how it works for everybody else. They're absolutely out of their mind. For this story, Evil Hat's answers were written collectively by several members of the team, so while we're attributing the quotes to Evil Hat, no, they reflect the views of many actual people who work there. Ooh, are they diverse people? Better make sure. No, because they're all saying the same thing. If they didn't put this disclaimer here, you literally would not be able to tell the difference between their opinions, because they're all the same. Just as important was Fate of Cthulhu's mature content warning, which encourages game masters to communicate with their players about the hard edges of the game and seek their enthusiastic consent. Now, what exactly is enthusiastic consent? Like, regular consent's not good enough? You have to be excited for it as well? We think it's always worth giving both players and game masters a heads up so they can judge for themselves whether this is the type of content they want to explore. How do you not... Okay, all right. Maybe I'm nuts. But how do you not know what you're getting into when you get into one of these games? No one wants their session to suddenly go sour because the game unexpectedly slips into anxiety-inducing material. Can we have a moment of silence for the absolute mental retardation that I have just read here? Okay, enough dead air. Who gets anxiety from playing a tabletop RPG? I really want to know. Is there somebody out there that exists who actually gets anxiety from that? What I think is, if you're a person who gets anxious over a game, and I mean like legitimate, like, you know, not because, oh, this environment is spooky and it's like, you know, the DM has created a scene so realistic that it, you know, evokes some type of emotion. I'm talking about people with unchecked mental illness who are acting like they're getting PTSD flashbacks from a game. If that's you, the problem is not the game. The problem is you. Work out your issues and then play the game. Because if fiction is causing you that much harm, there's got to be something wrong. It's paper and cardboard on a motherfucking table. Exactly. It just, oh man. Exactly. That's a big part of it. So there's something to be said. As much as we all hate feeling bad or, you know, going through hardship, there is certainly something to be said for experiencing adversity. Because you learn to cope with various things. You learn that sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes you're going to be hurt. Sometimes things aren't going to go exactly the way you expected them to go. But these people are people who have allowed themselves to somehow be shielded by that and just completely subverted the course of human growth by avoiding each and every potential little thing that has ever caused the slightest amount of discomfort. And it's mind-blowing to me that now somehow they get to control society based on that. Not all tabletop RPGs carry the same emotional weight, and there's a big difference between running a group of friends through Storm King's Thunder in Dungeons & Dragons and running through an apocalyptic horror game like Fate of Cthulhu. No, not really. I mean, that depends on, you know, the DMs and the way that they personally run the game. That's not a blanket truth. You can edit these modules to your liking to do whatever the hell you want with them. I mean, you could have look, I don't know the lore of the Storm King's Thunder module or whatever, but you could have the Storm King raping bitches left and right. It doesn't have to be some G-rated thing. Crazed Juno, thank you for the follow. All right, where was I? I'm losing my mind along with my place. Games like Fate of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade, and Numenera are edgier than their high fantasy counterparts, and that's part of the appeal. So, all right, again, you can have edgy D&D content if you want to. I mean, does anybody remember all the bitching about Goblin Slayer? It's based on D&D. So, I mean, look, that's just a book example, but obviously people have personal games that have quote-unquote edgy content. So that's bullshit. But they're also saying that, they're making the claim these games are edgier, while also advocating to water them down with these pussy content warnings and just acting as though people are so fragile that, playing a game of make-believe is going to crush them. Maybe you're just not ready for it if that's how it makes you feel. The mature themes are built in and aren't always used empathetically by players and storytellers. Okay, and they shouldn't be. Consent warnings are coming into vogue in these games and are long overdue, given the mature themes and tendency to push players into uncomfortable places. Really now? Who does that? Now, I've heard stories of, these weird creepo DMs that will do like this supposedly unwanted, sexual shit. And they're the freaks. I don't think they are the rule, okay? Most people know not to just like go all in and start molesting characters and whatnot. I mean, that's not how it is. I've never played a Dungeons & Dragons game that is like that. Of course, I suppose I can't experience such discomfort since I happen to be male. Oh. But the whole point of these games is what I like to just call conflict, okay? And in order to have a narrative, a meaningful one, you need conflict of some sort. I mean, even if you're playing Slice of Life, the RPG, right? Maybe you drop the dishes on the floor when you're doing the dishes and you break them. And mom's going to come home and she's going to yell at you. That's conflict. Even something as simple as that is considered conflict. And the narrative is the vessel by which you reach the resolution. I didn't think that these things needed to be explained, but apparently some people just don't comprehend how fiction works. Okay, it's possible to play in uncomfortable spaces safely. This is cancer. Vampire the Masquerade's 5th edition release made headlines when publisher White Wolf was accused of anti-Semitism, promoting pedophilia, and marketing to neo-Nazis. Oh, of course, I imagine that they just bowed down because those buzzwords. White Wolf's response was clear and fast. It modified language in its game. Wow. Fucking cucks, man. Modified language in its game, apologized profusely, included an appendix titled Advice for Considerate Play, which detailed how to handle violence, fascism, and sexual trauma sensitively in a tabletop RPG. Oh my god, the soy is just dripping out of this article. Oh. Then White Wolf quickly destroyed the goodwill it had built up among fans when it used Chechenya's LGBT community as a prop in a section of a vampire book. White Wolf apologized again, and Paradox Interactive, its parent company, reined it in. This sounds retarded. Why do these people keep cowering? How far does this go on? Holy shit. Do we really need to read the whole thing? Let me just scroll a little bit here and see what we're working on. Damn. This is a lot longer than I thought. Alright, well, let me see. Um, Despite the controversies, White Wolf's content warnings are still good. They're empathetic and clear about potential abuse between players. Okay, if your friends are abusing you during a game, I mean, doesn't that say more about your friends than it does about the game? Like, maybe you need better friends? Has that occurred to anybody? No, we need to make the game for complete pansies. That way, just in case somebody with a bad attitude wants to play, they'll be driven away because it's pathetic. Okay, here we go. Vampire the Masquerade is not a fascist-friendly game, the appendix says. If you were a neo-Nazi-friendly, alt-righter, or whatever you're calling yourself nowadays, we urge you to put this book down and call someone who you trust to talk about where you went wrong in your life. Oh, imagine thinking that you can lecture people on their opinions, perceived opinions at that, because you write a source book for a fucking game. Talking about overstepping your bounds. The Masquerade's 5th edition has been out for more than a year, but people are still discovering the game. The recent announcement of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, a sequel to a cult favorite based on the tabletop, has driven more people to the game. As more players discover the book and the content warning within, they take to the internet to complain about it. Yeah, wow, I mean, big shock that people don't want their politics assumed and then talked down to by some douchebag who thinks that it's his job to try and de-radicalize people through a fucking source book. What the hell is going on at White Wolf? Read a post on the Bloodlines subreddit this past January. Is there any reason behind this meltdown? The user posted a screenshot of the first page of advice for considerate play to his post. It's not unique for people to complain about content warnings online, but it's rare for the authors of content warnings to push back against them. That's what Jacqueline Brick, because she's a piece of shit, freelance writer, game designer, and the author of Vampire's Advice for Considerate Play did. Hi, I wrote this, she said on Reddit, and I'm absolutely giddy that it's doing what it's intended to do. See? Right there. This is proof that none of this is about being a good person. It's just all designed to be petty revenge. That's all it is. They get off on it. They don't deserve to have any type of writing visible to anyone in the world. Keep it in your diary, bitch. Brick then proceeded to argue with her critics on Reddit until a moderator locked the thread a day later. According to Brick, this isn't the first time she's defended her work and doesn't think it'll be the last. They rediscover it every so often and raise a stink about it, she told me in a Facebook DM. Maybe they're just late to the book, maybe it's Bloodlines, maybe it's because they've been rolling in the hatred and needed to vent it. But it's always the same. Some dude finds a safety text and yells about it being a hysterical meltdown or not real gaming or whatever. Because it's exactly what it is. It's soy gaming. And it is a meltdown. Because you're talking to a group of players who you know nothing about. A person walks into a bookstore, or maybe they sit there on fucking Amazon and order your book, get it in their hands, open it. You know literally nothing about them. It's just a monetary transaction. You know nothing of this person. They could have any opinions in the world. I mean, are you really going to sit there and write out a whole advice page? I noticed how you focused on the whole bullshit Nazi and fascist or whatever. Well, why didn't you write a page like, we don't want pedophiles playing our game, we don't want rapists playing our game, we don't, like, why don't you just go through the whole list? Maybe you don't want murderers playing your game. Why stop there? So should we assume that because it's not specifically stated on your advice page that you endorse these things? I think we should. That's the standard you're setting, that if you don't say it, that you agree with it. Brick said she feels it's important to fight these battles when they come up, even if they're exhausting or repetitive. I consider myself an anti-fascist, and I like getting my metaphorical milkshakes to the face in where I can, she said. What a fucking bitch. What an absolute mentally deficient member of the human race. The negative reaction to content warnings always take the same shape. The aggrieved point a finger and claim the writers are having an emotional overreaction, which they are, then demand a return to an era where everyone stoically dealt with their trauma and ignored it when a piece of art evoked uncomfortable feelings. No, that's not what that says at all. They're just saying they did it without, writing about it in a source book. Maybe they went to therapy. Something all these people should be doing. A good content warning can filter out the bastards. No, it can't. No, it can't. You think it can, but it can't. People are still buying these books. I think they shouldn't buy the books. I think they should only play content pre-soy. That way, your company can see that nobody agrees with this except for these radical psychos that want to see their politics featured in everything. She said the response to her work has been more positive than negative, but of course we need a whole article to focus on the negative then. And it's important to keep giving players guides to help them navigate potentially traumatic waters in gaming. Imagine thinking that's a real thing. People actually think like this, and it makes my head hurt because I don't understand how we got to this point of like games are traumatic. How about don't play? Sometimes a game will touch on something that may affect your players because it or something like it happened to your players IRL. In real life, she said. Rape is probably the most obvious example of this, but gaslighting, torture, and animal death are others, and playing with those can be hard. It's not hard if you just do this little thing that I like to call separating fiction. Oh shit, I'm doing a bad thing here. I almost closed off the tab. Separating fiction from reality like any ordinary person would do. It's not normal to project all your mental traumas onto a game and then blame that game for your personal problems. And all this is solved by one keyword. Because again, these are private games. Communication. If you and the people you play with understand what type of people you are, what you like, what you don't like, then you incorporate that into your personal game. But like I said, they don't want people to play the way they want to play. They want people to play the way they want them to play. They want to have that sense of control over everybody, which is exactly what they claim everybody else is trying to do, even though that's not the case. Most people just wanted to be left alone to play their damn game. The content warnings aren't there to stop people from playing tabletop games that touch on those themes. They're meant to give people a framework for including them responsibly. I hate this whole responsibly thing. Process is similar to how a well-run BDSM community treats consent. Why am I not surprised they use that as a reference? There's lots of communication in before and after and during sessions, and checklists that help players and partners create a list of their do's, don'ts, and maybes. They definitely fucked up the writing there. This guy sucks. BDSM Scenesters checklist helps consenting adults understand lists before they start fucking an RPG. What the fuck? Is this real life? Is this absolute degeneracy? How do we get to this point? 50 plus years of left taking control of all Yeah, I mean, look, that's true. It's just fucking sad though. I can't believe it. It's just so pathetic how easily led people are into believing this nonsense. I mean, I guess it's like you keep telling people they're weak and eventually they believe it. Oh my God, this is a major issue. We need protection from this. Oh my God, who's going to do it? Now the corporation is going to do it. Not you anymore. It's not your job to take care of your own problems. It's Big Daddy Corporation. Because remember, guys, it's bad when the government does it, but for some reason, a corporation can just do whatever they want to you. They can fucking bull right over you. Doesn't matter. According to Evil Hat, setting boundaries early leads to better games. There's no way to know every player's past, and there's no reason anyone should be obligated to disclose their entire personal history before a game gets underway, the company told me. So instead, a content warning and the use of safety tools like the X card, script change, or lines and veils. I don't know what these things are. sounds stupid. Creates an atmosphere of trust and respect. You're setting the boundaries. Hey, we're all here to have fun, but if the game suddenly crosses the line and stops being fun, let's pause or redirect that so we can get back on track and make sure it's enjoyable for the whole table. Eric Wolf, thank you for the lemons. So here's my question. Who doesn't already do that? Like, who doesn't sit down and play a game with the intent to have fun? For example, in a recent game of Dungeons & Dragons, Evil Hat witnessed at a local game store, oh, here we go, started without safety rules or a content discussion of any kind. One of the players was an Iraq veteran. This is going to be bullshit. Previous version of the story incorrectly stated that Evil Hat Productions ran a... Okay, whatever. We were in the midst of combat, and the GM described someone's jaw getting broken, the company said, and the vet stopped the game and said, hey, I'm cool with most things, but I have a thing about teeth. Clearly having anxiety about it. Now, that's not on the list of most people's triggers, but if we'd had a better content discussion or had safety tools available, then it would have been a much smoother experience for him as well as everyone else in the game. Wait a minute. Okay, first of all, not only did this not happen, but even if it did, what's the problem? What's the problem with the person saying, oh, I don't like this? Huh. Interesting. It's like they're trying to prevent any slight little slip up. It's really stupid. The man is an adult. He's been to war. He's been to war. He can't handle this conversation? Basically, treating people's real-life issues carelessly can fuck them up more. But it's not real life. That's the thing you're missing. Treating them with care and full informed consent is like, well, like if you're going to top someone and you don't know their limits, right? You need to ask and make it clear what you want to do and come to... What the fuck are they talking about? Why do they keep going back to sexual things? I don't understand. I mean, I do understand. They're just freaks. But... But they keep doing it. Brick said she'll keep fighting fascists online as she sees them. Basically, anyone who disagrees with her makes people feel safe, while also making it clear that people who engage with the material in bad faith are not welcome, she said. Oh, there's that inclusion again. There's that inclusion. Evil Hat wants to see content warnings become the norm. Hopefully it's less of a trend and more of a standard practice that's beginning to emerge. Oh, no. Please, let it die. RPGs are enjoying an unprecedented renaissance, and that's bringing in a new and diverse audience. No, it's bringing in a bunch of assholes who don't understand the concept. It's both incorrect and irresponsible to assume that everyone playing is a 28-year-old white guy from Wisconsin. Said nobody ever. From our point of view, to be truly committed to welcoming new players to the hobby, including content notices like this, and encouraging the use of safety tools in play is one step in putting our money where our mouth is. Like, put your money up your ass, you bitches. I'm so sick and tired of these demented morons taking over these companies and just inserting their ideological drivel all over the place like a cat pissing against a wall. And that's really all they're doing. They're just shooting everybody. It's a fucking spread shot of ideological cancer. And it needs to stop. Tony, thank you for the lemon. Ralph Kuhn, thank you for the lemon. Subversive. It's just... I don't know, man. I think if you are bringing this type of nonsense into your work, then you don't deserve your job. That's not the point of this. But I know why they're doing it. Again, it's this whole idea that rather than reality inspiring fiction, that fiction shapes reality. And I think to an extent, there's kind of some truth to both of those, but at the end of the day, you have to realize that fiction is just a story, okay? It's not real. It's not your life. It's not your mental problems on display. It's just a story that contains potentially relatable themes and also plenty of fantastical things that are completely impossible in reality, which is the entire purpose of fiction. to enjoy things that you can't enjoy in real life. Whether because it's a crime to do it in real life, or you don't have wings so you can't fly, or you can't fight dragons because they don't exist. That's the purpose. But all they're doing is saying, no, we need to create all these rules that water it down so that people who are never going to play anyway will want to play. And this whole idea, this imaginary made-up wall of gatekeeping that they have projected onto the people that they used to call losers for playing these games. You're the losers. Because now you've realized that because these things have gained like a modicum of popularity, that they're not so bad. Oh, because you see your fancy, e-celebs playing Dungeons and Dragons, suddenly it's cool. Oh, I'm a Matthew Mercer. Okay, fuck Critical Role and all the people that decided to make Dungeons and Dragons an absolute shit show of celebrities who are like, I'm cool because I'm a nerd. No, you're not. None of you are cool. You're absolute jackasses who have completely misunderstood the purpose of the hobby. And now, it's not good enough for you to be able to get your group of friends and take a book home. You have to ruin everybody else's enjoyment because you're so mental that you're concerned that somebody out there is enjoying a game in a way that you might not personally like. Who even does that? When I just think for a moment how crazy that is. When I'm sitting here and I'm playing Final Fantasy, we just completed Final Fantasy last night, so it's still fresh in my mind. When I'm sitting here and I'm playing Final Fantasy, do you think I'm concerned with all the dumbasses out there who are playing Final Fantasy in a different way than I am, or, that are not enjoying it because it has old game mechanics or whatever? That's not even on the list of things in my mind. I'm enjoying something that I like. These people don't know how to enjoy anything. Sephi, you shut up. I completed that game with 3 party members. It was incredible. Everybody stood up and clapped, whether they admit it or not. And you know it's true. No, but seriously, it's unreal. It's really just absolutely wild that this is becoming the accepted narrative. They've completely rewritten the history of things, okay? And what's crazy about it is you have a lot of these goofballs that were bullied back then for doing these hobbies, for taking part in these hobbies, now siding with these bastards that are trying to push out the very people that, enjoyed the hobby by their side all those years ago. And I have a bit of a theory on why that is, okay? Some of these nerds, and I mean the actual nerds that were, made fun of, mocked, bullied, got their heads fucking dunked in the toilet, maybe they were overweight, maybe they did all these, things that were considered unpopular back then. Dungeons and Dragons, video games, you name it, they were into it. So they were mistreated. They understand what it's like to be mistreated. And now you have this entire group of people who are coming in and saying, we're mistreated, we just want to play our games, we want to play these games with you, we're mistreated by society, blah, blah, blah. And they can empathize with that because they're the losers. They were the losers before. So now they are taking these people at face value and having their empathy manipulated against them to be warped into this identity which we have come to be known as the ally. You know what I'm talking about. These extremely unattractive, fat, maybe too skinny, soy boy looking bitches that are like always white knighting some other identity to the point that they absolutely will put themselves down or say things like, I'm going to be quiet and listen when so-and-so speaks. Why? Are they making a good point? Because if they aren't, they can fuck off just like everybody else. That's equality, bitch. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of it. And the worst part is, they make completely ordinary people look cruel by comparison for not bowing down to each and every whim that these people have. It's absurd. But that's what I think. That's what I think a big part of it is that they're just remembering their past trauma and thinking it's the same exact thing. Like, they're just believing that these people are automatically mistreated and then saying, we need to help them the way we wished somebody helped us. And now they're either, I hate to even use this as like a status symbol, but this is how they perceive it. They're moderators for these pathetic fucking bullshit forums. Maybe they have a journalist job at, Gizmodo, or maybe they are, maybe they're writing for one of these companies, and they'll just kowtow to the narrative because they want to be seen as good and helpful people, when all they're really doing is destroying not only everything, but their own self-esteem. And it's just, it's mental to me. I don't understand it. I'm never going to understand it. But they must have no self-confidence, and they think they're doing something out of the kindness of their heart, but all they're really doing is messing everything up for everybody else. They're not understanding the manipulation, that the very same people that are wanting in are the same people that made fun of them all those years ago. I mean, you want to forgive and forget, that's perfectly fine, but that doesn't mean you suddenly give up all control or you just change everything for their whims. Oh, let me see. I think there was one more thing. Yeah, you know what? There is. It's not a big deal, but let's put one victory on the side of free speech. Speaking of Gizmodo. Shitty person. This is journalism, right? Shitty person wins case against UK police who warned him about his transphobic tweets. Dum dum dum. Oh boy, this is really a great use of police resources. Now, the UK, they can't take down the Muslim rape gangs, the pedo rings, whatever, the stabbings, but they sure can stop you from tweeting. I mean, I guess in this case they failed, but the fact remains is that they made the attempt. A high court in the UK ruled on Friday that police should not have visited a man. This is kind of surprising to me, to be honest. But it's some good news to end on. A little bit of good news, anyway. Should not have visited a man who sent out transphobic tweets at his place of work, and that they had a substantial chilling effect by doing so, The Guardian reported. Police told 54-year-old Lincolnshire man and former cop, that's interesting, Harry Miller, that no crime was committed, but his tweets were recorded as a hate incident. What even is that? According to The Guardian, the High Court of London found that Humberside police acted with disproportionate interference, exactly, by confronting him at his place of work, but upheld rules that allowed him to record the tweets as hateful. So it's like a partial victory, right? Because, yeah, he's not going to jail, yeah, he's not getting arrested, but they've still made a recording as though this is something to be, on notice. Let's see. Guidelines by the College of Policing, a professional policing organization in the UK, state that a transgender hate incident is any wow, so it doesn't even have to be a crime. This is what pisses me off when people are like, they're so oppressed. Who the fuck else has these special considerations? When even a non-crime is considered a hate incident. By the way, hate incident is a completely made-up thing. That's not a real thing. Which is perceived by the victim or any other person to be motivated by hostility or prejudice against a person who is transgender or perceived to be transgender. So you don't even have to be No way. Among 30 other tweets police identified as anti-trans, Miller had retweeted a poem containing the lines, "Your breasts are made of silicone, your vagina goes nowhere," according to the Telegraph. I mean, come on, that's not wrong, right? Denouncing transgenderism. One of his other tweets read, "I was assigned mammal at birth, but my orientation is fish. Don't misspecies me, fuckers." Come on. What's wrong with that? It's 50. That's some 54-year-old humor for sure. I mean, hell, I might even make a joke like that. Come on. I'm an old soul. What can I say? Mr. Justice Julian Knowles wrote in his ruling that nonetheless the tweets were lawful and there was not the slightest risk that he would commit a criminal offense by continuing to tweet. And when the police visited him at work, it was clear Miller was being warned not to exercise his right to freedom of expression about transgender issues on pain of potential criminal prosecution. Knowles described the College of Policing guidelines as legitimate. So they still kind of agree, but they couldn't really charge him with anything. Let's see. Miller addressed reporters outside the courtroom by calling the ruling a watershed moment for liberty. I mean, look, go forth and tweet without fear. I think that's overselling it. It's a good thing, but this is still like what they're trying to do, which is sad. But you know what? If everybody banded together and made these so-called transphobic tweets, well, were they going to arrest everybody? Come on. It's time to take a stand. Take to your Twitter, UK. Let's go. It is a strong warning to local police forces not to interfere with people's free speech rights on matters of significant controversy. That is true. I'm going to skip that little bit, but I think trans people will be worried it could become open season on us because the court didn't really define what the threshold for acceptable speech was. Are you serious? What is the threshold for acceptable speech? Shouldn't the rule be like anything short of actually inciting violence? Which, I mean, I think that one's a hard thing to define too. But you know what really makes me angry about this is that you have people with like crazy politics that will go, these crazy like left-wing leaning people, they'll go and make like obvious sounding threats to the president, for example. I mean, I know we're talking UK, USA difference here, but it doesn't seem like anything really happens to them. Once in a while, maybe you'll see the post removed, but the outrage doesn't seem as excessive because it's seen as like, righteous anger. I don't know. The whole thing is mental. It's just like, it's crazy to me that we're living in a time where the police would show up to your house over a tweet. You should... has anybody looked at Twitter? There's open pedophiles on there. And nobody's doing anything about that. Where are the police showing up at their door? Where are the police showing up at the door of the people saying it's okay to do weird shit to animals? Nowhere. Exactly. It's not happening. These are the priorities. Oh no, somebody said something about somebody that's pretending to be something they're not. How wild. Okay, guys. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover. I think we came back with a vengeance. I don't know when I'm going to do another one of these, but I'll try not to make it another 2 months incident. Let me see if there's... So there's only 36 Lino in the box. You really want me to open that, or you want me to wait? Because I think I'm going to be streaming tomorrow, too. They call them... Yeah, they call them map. There's only 36 in the box. I feel like that might be a wait. Let the box grow. Yeah, I think we're going to hold. But, because, I mean, look, there's 60 people here. There's no way that's going to be, it resets. Zelkova, I don't know if that's, I've heard that before, and yet I have, the last time I forgot to open it on Sunday, it didn't reset. Cucked again out of my lemons, fucking bullshit. Wait a second, didn't you get a bunch last night or no? Says right there before you distribute. Let me just look. It does say reset every Sunday at midnight, but it says UTC. But yeah, I did just open it Friday. Gay ops disinfo. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even. What the hell does UTC even stand for? I mean, I know it's a time zone, but I don't look at any other time zones that often. You're gonna play Metal Gear Solid poorly. Perhaps that might be on the list. I know I definitely want to get to it at some point, but I'm just not sure when. All right, well I'm gonna take the risk and wait because it seemed like it was. Oh, it's 2 a.m. UTC now, so we should be good. All right, guys. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for all the donations. I appreciate the fact that there were so many people interacting in chat, even though I was kind of in rant mode and couldn't really address all of it. But just the viewership itself is much appreciated, especially after being offline for so long, for at least for this show. But I'll be back when I come up with some more topics, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. And I will see you next stream. Oh, Zelkov, I'm sorry, man. It was like the replay will be up, so maybe you can enjoy it. All right. Thanks again, guys, and everybody have a good evening.